Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our Future 101 podcast. My name is Andre, and I am here with my favorite co-host, Ms. Brown. Welcome.
I love that.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. You know that feeling when you go to bed really late and you're like, oh, I'm going to feel so shit tomorrow. But you wake up and you actually feel pretty good. You only got like 4 hours of sleep.
Well, it's always nice to wake up with energy and
Right?
feeling good.
But then sometimes you go to bed and you wake up and it's like you slept for 9 hours and you just feel
and
like
you
shit.
feel terrible. Yeah.
I don't know. That's just how the world works. Anyways, so today we're going to be addressing some comments on a viral video we made.
Yeah, almost 30,000 views on TikTok.
I don't know if that's considered viral, but
I don't know,
for
actually.
us, it's pretty viral.
That's our most viewed video on TikTok. And I think that's the highest amount of views we've gotten on any of our platforms.
TikTok, of all places.
I know. That we really didn't see that coming.
No, because usually on TikTok we get like...
100, if that.
Do we get 100? Or do we...
I'd say recently, like over the summer, we've been getting
I just remember getting like
100.
no views. It was just post a video, yeah.
It's really picked up recently, and I think it's because of this video.
Okay. People like look at our profile and
Yeah.
stuff, and they check out other things.
Yep.
Okay. Well, so the video was about us going on the streets in Toronto and asking about whether we have the right to self-defense.
Yes.
Just to give everybody some context. You can check out the video on our TikTok or YouTube or anything that we do.
All the platforms. It's everywhere.
Yes. And essentially we go around and asking people, and most people think, yeah, like we got the right to self-defense. Like, come on now. Of course we do.
That is logical, right? That makes sense. You can protect yourself.
Yeah. But then we actually give them the real thing and we say, hey, not really. It's subject to interpretation in the court, so there's a good chance you might be charged with assault if you do something to the attacker. And so you're only legal to be like the perfect citizen type of choice is to call the police and hope they arrive and deal with the attacker before they deal with you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or, retreat, run away. So that's not really defense. It's a little bit cowardly too.
Yeah, like
depending on the situation.
You're in your house.
That's true. Where are you gonna go? Run out into the forest somewhere?
I guess. But
we got a lot of comments.
Yeah, it was a good video. It's pretty entertaining. It's only like a minute long. It's a TikTok, right?
It is entertaining. We had some great responses from people.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun.
We had one guy in particular who was really funny.
Yes.
His reactions were amazing. But anyways, we're going to go through the comments and we're going to address the comments because a lot of people feel like we are spreading misinformation. And
I mean, to be fair, there were a lot of mixed reactions to the video.
Yeah.
We got 300 comments and probably half of them are people telling us that we're wrong. And then the other half is a mix of like, oh, I didn't know that, or no, you're right.
Yeah.
And then some personal stories as well from people.
Yes. So we're going to go through those first, and then we're actually going to take a look at the law and see how things work. Another thing on the agenda today is we're going to take a look at the gun laws and crime with gun in North America, particularly in America. And we're just going to see if banning guns is something that we should be doing in our country based on the statistics, real statistics,
I'm excited
not
for
the
this.
stuff that we see on TV. So, first comment. This is from Lager That V. He says, or she says, I don't know. Wrong. Anyone has inherent right to self-defense, but only minimum force. And this is like majority of comments that kind of go along with the same stuff. There's a crazy story here, but I'm just going to read through these ones. Somebody says, better read your laws. You do have the right. It's how you defend yourself that's described under the laws. I don't know about that.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah. Somebody says, the misinformation here is insane. It pains me. People like this creator can vote. We need to start taking law and government exams to vote.
That's me. I do have the right to vote. I'm a Canadian citizen.
Yeah.
I voted in the last election. I'll vote in the next one too.
I bet this person didn't even vote. There's
Now
a good
that
chance.
would be interesting. That's true with the low
There's a
voter
great
turnout we
chance.
had. Man,
Yeah.
that is quite possible actually. But in terms of the law and government exams, I mean that's fair. We've talked about this before in our podcast about the Ontario election.
I think
back
that's a
in
good
June.
idea.
Yeah, people, you should know how your government works.
Mm-hmm.
You should know the laws and stuff. It's should be your civic duty to be aware of how things operate in your country. But also, we do have the civics course in high school, and
Which
I
is
passed that
supposed to.
class.
Yes. So technically you
So
yeah.
technically, based on who is this? I can't even read what that
Ken
Calliot.
Calliot.
I don't know what that says, but whatever this person's saying, this suggestion to take law and government exams, I did. I wrote my civics exam, and I probably got like a 95 on it too. So, yeah, I got
Wow.
a really good grade in that class actually.
Okay, well,
Back in
that
my
makes you an
feminist
expert
days. What else is there?
Next one. Somebody says, so you have to make it a fair fight for the criminal who breaks into your house in the middle of the night, which is the point. Someone else says, it's going to be up to you to convince the judge that you festered for you life. And
Feared is what that should say. You feared for your life.
Festered. Okay, feared.
Typo. There's tons of them on TikTok.
All right. I'm going to restart that. It's going to be up to you to convince the judge that you feared for your life and that you had no other choice, so you can defend yourself with limits.
That would be exactly the problem and the reason that we made this video.
So a couple crazy...
Oh, wait, no, there's one more.
There is?
I love this one.
Okay, you
Who
read
is
that one.
this? It was genius. This is like my favorite comment, I think, from Colin W885. I think that's what that says. You got to ask the intruder what weapon they have. So you can...
Okay, you got to get through this.
I know, I can't even read this. You got to ask the intruder what weapon they have so you can find the same weapon before they...
Okay, so you got to find the same weapon before they get you, so you can duel them in a fair fight.
Yes. I love that. So good.
So good.
Thank you for your comment. Now we got some stories, right?
Yep. Okay. So we have one story here that says, my mom and I were victim of a break-in and not even the cops came. The men
Wow.
were on drugs and armed and threatening us, and the dispatcher did nothing.
That is horrible.
Yeah, like this is a completely like side. Like this hasn't much to do with like what we're talking about.
No, these are just like anecdotes from people's lives.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we mention that these are here because so much when it comes to this stuff, when it comes to our laws and how they're applied and who gets charged or who gets jail time or whatever is subjective. And the whole point is there's so much inconsistency that this kind of thing happens.
Yeah.
And you don't get help.
Yeah, and the thing is, this just proves the point that, you know, when people say, oh, like, you don't need guns to defend yourself. You don't need to defend yourself because you got police. And, you know, you call them, they're going to be there in 5 seconds. This is
Yeah.
an exact scenario where that should have happened. But obviously, it doesn't work practically. Like,
Exactly.
regardless of what the laws are, like we could talk, we're going to talk about the laws, and we know that we're right about what we were saying because we obviously double check our information before we go on the streets and make a
Yes,
video.
we're not spreading misinformation.
Like before we go into that, like just a general understanding of life is just common sense that you should have the complete right to defend yourself if you are in danger by somebody else. And there should be very little limits, if at all, when somebody's attacking you and looking to kill you or hurt you or do something bad to you or break into your house, that type of stuff. But here it's like the reason for that is because clearly in some cases the police are just never even going to show up, or if they do show up, they're just cleaning up the mess. They're not there to actually do the fighting.
Yeah. And there were some other comments on here, like, you know, depending on where you live, if you're out in the middle of Alberta somewhere, the police are not going to be there in 5 minutes. Just saying.
Yeah.
So, you know, just there's a lot to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, I could see this happening like in the boonies and somebody, gets drunk, they have a gun, and they start wandering around, and they stumble onto somebody's house, break in there, and start causing shit. Who's gonna come save you? Nobody's coming.
No, it'll be a while.
Yeah, if ever. You'd be like, oh, you're way too far. I'm sorry.
That's really bad.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, like, looking at this story, nobody came, right? The dispatcher did nothing. Mm-hmm. It's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
Somebody else says, yep, got charged with assault on self-defense incident 20 years ago. Ruined my life.
See? So you can, I mean, obviously we don't know the details of this case, this situation, but it just goes to show that you don't actually have a right to self-defense if you can be the one charged with assault when the assault was on you.
Yeah. Pretty bad. And going on to an expert, apparently. A legal expert that's going to tell us how wrong we are. And this person actually, like, DM'd us. They didn't even comment. They were just so furious.
Yes.
When you're using so many...
This was on Instagram, not TikTok.
Oh, this is Instagram now. Yeah. Okay. So, National Writers Association says, you're a Canadian journalist, right? Mind doing Canadians a favor and actually do your UR research?
Oh my,
that typos. Is wrong. You have the right to defend... We have the right to defend ourselves, but clearly you were just listening to TikToks to find UR information.
Oh my.
I am a paralegal. Paralegal, and you don't know the difference between your, and UR. How?
I don't know.
Anyways, I'm a paralegal, and there is nothing stating you can't defend yourself. There are restrictions, as in you can't use excessive force, of course. I wouldn't expect us to be able to especially being from Canada. If you want to, nice here. If you want to murder someone on UR property for trespassing, go to America. Stop posting fake news. This is what gets people in fucking shit. Know that you won't be able to continue being a journalist if you continue to spread false information.
My career is over.
Journalists are required by law to share truthful journalism to viewers in Canada.
Wouldn't it be nice if our journalists actually held to that?
We wouldn't have to be on the streets doing this stuff.
Oh, I know. It'd be fantastic. Man, the past 2 years wouldn't have happened like they did. But yeah, I am a journalist, actually. I will accept that. Yes, I am. Okay. I write for a magazine, so I am a journalist. There we go.
So you are actually...
I am actually a journalist.
Okay. Yes.
I don't have a degree in journalism, but you don't need one.
You don't need one to be a journalist? Okay, so why is it... Okay, we're not going to think that.
You go to school and you study what you want to. That's why.
So what's the point?
That's what you should do. You should study what you're interested in.
Yeah, okay.
That's my point. Don't, go to school just to get a career.
Okay.
That's a whole other conversation. But anyways,
let's get through this part. So let's talk about the actual legal right, what a right is, and what we meant by a right, and generally what a right should mean.
Yes.
Because we have changed the definitions of so many things in the past few years.
No kidding.
That nothing means anything anymore, and so a lot of these definitions are being eradicated. So let's actually talk about right as a definition.
Yes, and let us know what you think a right is in the comments. I'm curious to know. All right, so this is from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, because that's just the one that I chose. So a right is something to which one has a just claim, such as the power or privilege to which one is justly entitled, like voting rights or your right to decide, and something that one may properly claim as due. Example, knowing the truth is her right. So this kind of says to me that a right is not something that can be taken from you because it's something to which you have a claim.
Regardless of the circumstances.
Yes. So
it said about the truth, knowing the truth is her right. That's part of it's kind of like an example, right? Mm-hmm. There shouldn't be any circumstance where that person can't know the truth, right? I can't just say, oh, because you were in this particular circumstance, therefore you can only have partial truth because I decided that that's fair. Like,
Yeah.
that's not a right. You get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah. I just don't really have anything to add on to that. It's just, yes, you're right.
I am right.
Yeah.
Okay. I have the
that's-
right to be right.
Do you? I don't know about that one.
Oh yeah, I guess not.
No, let's move on. Okay, so we looked up the criminal code sections that people were quoting to us, and this is the
Yeah.
the
Well, wait.
laws on defense.
Hold on. So just going back to just to put this into context with what the comments we were saying, because most people are confused about what right actually means, and that like we mentioned, a right is not into interpretation. So if we're talking about the context of our comments, where or the video where it's like, okay, somebody intruder breaks in and they're doing an illegal act to you or your
Yeah.
property, then you have the right to self-defense. That's what a right should be.
Yes.
And there would be no circumstance under which, like, oh no, like that's not actually a good you're not making a good case here, or in this circumstance particularly, oh, that's not going to work, that you don't have a right there. Like that's not really a right. That's just like you might get lucky with a judge. Right? Like you're going to court and essentially the jury or the judge is going to be deciding whether you are granted the right or not, which
Yeah.
is not what a right is.
Like retrospectively, it's like, okay, yes, you had the right to do that. Right.
yeah.
Or maybe you don't. You don't know going into it.
Yes,
is
and-
the point that we're trying to make here.
There's obviously like cases, even in just our comments, where the right is not granted, but a right should never be in
It should
in
not need to be
interpretation
granted,
at all.
though.
It should
It
not be
should
granted.
inherent.
It should just be there
Yes.
and not be questioned.
Yep.
Like there shouldn't be a court case happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why is it written up that there needs to be, the way that a court can take into account everything that happened?
Yeah.
That doesn't need to be there. If
Like
it was actually
the
your
only
right.
like kind of circumstances I could see is like, oh, like two kids in high school are like brawling, and one kid just takes out a knife and just kills the kid, right? Like that's different. But it depends
pretty
also on the
bad.
situation there, because if that kid is just being like, he's going to kill, like they're both just going to kill each other, then I understand because they're both fighting for their life and there shouldn't be a court case. But like, oh, if somebody goes and slaps you, like, does that really constitute your right to just charge at him with a knife now? Like, I don't know. No.
So
But-
basically we get where people commenting are coming from.
Yeah, like there are specific scenarios where like obviously you're not just going to kill a person for slapping you. Oh, he assaulted me, therefore I have the right to kill.
Yeah.
Like you don't really have the right to kill unless it's life-threatening. Mm-hmm. And whenever somebody breaks into your home, you have to assume it's life-threatening because they're intruding.
Yes, I don't know. I have not given any of these particular situations
Right,
too
but
much thought.
looking at the other scenarios, I could totally see that there are scenarios that would be like, yeah, you don't have the right to just kill because somebody slapped you, right?
Of course. That is something that we understand.
Yeah.
And we're not like suggesting
We're
that
not
you should
suggesting
have the
that,
right
yeah.
to kill no matter what. No, please don't kill people. Like that's not
Yeah, we're talking
don't do
about very
that.
serious situations.
Yes.
Where like somebody breaks into your home at 2 a.m. Come on now. Doesn't matter if they come in and slap you. You don't know what they're gonna do.
I don't know. Some of these situations just sound very strange to me, but I guess you never see it coming. And then
Yeah.
you just
It's just like the biggest issue with this interpretation type thing is because when somebody breaks in, people are gonna be like, if they know that, oh, I might go to jail, they might hesitate, and that could cost them their life, right? They might hesitate in that moment, being like, oh, I don't know, maybe I should just let him do his thing and call the police and be quiet so I don't go to jail, right? But then they go in and kill them, right?
Yeah.
But they could have been prepared. They could have been getting ready. They could have maybe had a weapon,
Yes.
whatever happens to be. But they were not going to get ready because, oh my God, I don't know. And they're just second guessing now. But when you give the people the freedom, you're allowed to defend yourself as long as this is the circumstance, like somebody broke into your home, then they're not even going to question that. They're immediately in the zone of defense. They're like, I'm defending my life and I don't care. And
Yes,
that
which is a
could-
natural response.
and that could have better outcomes than normally we do.
Yes. I also just want to point out, like, you don't have to take our advice. We were just like going out on the street and interviewing people to see what they think of things. It's like, we want to know what you know about your rights. And so there were people commenting like, this kind of a video, you need to take it down because this could get somebody killed because they think that they don't have the right to defend themselves. And someone comes in and whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do the research yourselves, okay?
Yeah.
Like, that's the other reason that we've done a lot of going out on the street and talking to people. And we haven't filmed the majority of it because a lot of it was Change My Mind events on campus and talking about the mandates and stuff. And the reason is because we want people to be aware of things that maybe not everybody thinks about. Yeah. So we go out there, we plant the seed. You're shocked by something new that you learned. Go and do the research yourself. Find out more about it. Because that was the response that we got from a lot of people.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I'm wrong. Like, they had never heard of this. And so, okay, now go and look into it. Don't just take us at our word. Do the research yourself. Yeah. We're not experts.
We don't have to be.
We don't have to be. And neither does anyone who is like looking into this stuff for themselves.
Yeah.
Make the decision for yourself.
But then again, for those people who are at home and something like this happens to them, your choice is essentially, do I defend myself and stay alive, or do I not defend myself and or do I stay alive and potentially go to jail, or do I not defend myself and risk my life being killed? Right? And that's kind of the choice there. And
it's a big decision to make.
Not really. It should be pretty straightforward with like, I'm going to defend my life.
Yes, I'm just saying, like, if that's the decision, if that's what you're like thinking about, I don't know.
Because like we had also a lot of comments that were just kind of like, yeah, that's the law, but I'm still going to defend myself. I don't care.
Yes, that's true. I forgot to mention that. We did. A lot of people were like, I don't care what the law is. Like, you come on my property, you attack me, I'm going to defend myself. Jail time, whatever the jury wants to think. After, exactly. And I think that that's a reasonable way to think.
Yeah. Like, because we can't change, we're not lawmakers, we can't change the law here, but
that was someone's question to us as well. So how do we change this law? I don't know, write a petition maybe?
Become a politician.
Yes.
Yeah. But like, we can't really do much about it at this present moment, so you got to make that choice beforehand so you're prepared.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on. You had other criminal code, right?
So the criminal code, I looked into all the stuff that people were like, this is why you're wrong, and here it is. And so I read up on it. And I mean, this is stuff that we knew beforehand anyways. But here is section 34 of the criminal code, just so that you know. Part 1 says, a person is not guilty of an offense if A, they believe on reasonable grounds that force is being used against them or another person, or that a threat of force is being made against them or another person. B, the act that constitutes the offense is committed for the purpose of defending or protecting themselves or the other person from that use or threat of force. And C, the act committed is reasonable in the circumstances. So there's a lot of reasonable language in there. They believe on reasonable grounds and...
Unreasonable language.
I just meant the word reasonable.
There's a lot of word reasonable, but the language is unreasonable.
Yes, it is. And this is, when was it? 10 years ago? 10 years ago, this law was updated. So I think the idea was to make the wording of these laws clearer and to allow for more broad assessment.
This is what you just read was...
This is the updated law. This is what it currently is. Yeah, I'm not going to read the old stuff. Let's not get confused.
Right.
But I'm just saying this is the updated stuff.
So this is
and it's
supposed
still,
to make it easier.
Yes, this is supposed to be better and improved. And I think that maybe in some ways it is a step better.
But as you can see, the wording here is very gray, because everything, every sentence, it mentions reasonable grounds. So it's like, that means that your right is not a right, because whether or not you are guilty still depends on the judge or the jury.
Yep.
So it's not a right.
Yeah.
Like, I have the right to freedom of speech. Okay.
No, you don't.
And
And that one's actually written in our charter and Bill of Rights.
Scratch that. What do I have the right? Do I have a right? What do I have the right to? Do I have the right to freely travel? That's in the Charter of Rights and Freedom, Section 7.
Yes.
Yet that's been also in there in the charter. It says you have the life, liberty, and security of persons.
And the right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice.
Accept. What's accept? That's not a right. If you
right, you have the right, except.
No.
Then it's not a right.
Then it's not a right.
Yes.
So, like, it doesn't specific, and also, we don't have a right to self-defense under the charter because
and that was an argument that people were making.
Yes,
that's not written in the charter.
It's not.
It says
not
you have a right to life,
stated.
and I think, did we read that comment? Somebody was like, you have the right to life, but not to defend it.
Yes, that's one of the comments there. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
I think that you are right. Whoever said that. Unfortunately, you're correct. And whatever security of the person means, but that still doesn't indicate self-defense. You have a right to security, but not to make yourself safe.
And what's funny is because lawmakers and just how things work in Canada, they are able to make these really far connections with other things like abortions, for example, right? We're not going to go far into that. You can watch our other podcasts and our...
the short video.
The short video, topics video that
it's very
I covered.
Good. I was impressed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On abortion, but essentially, the claim, there is no specific statement in the charter or in the Bill of Rights saying you have the right to abortion. It's an implication from life, liberty, and security of persons. So because you have the right to security of persons, therefore you have the right to bodily autonomy, therefore you have the right to an abortion. So you're making a lot of leaps there. Yet we barely make the leap to say you have the right to life, therefore you have the right to self-defense. We're not making that leap at all.
That's an interesting point. I like that.
Yeah. Because we're like, you can abort and kill a baby.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yet, if you defend yourself from being killed by an attacker, you could be prosecuted. Like, nobody goes to court and debates about, oh, you killed a baby, or that was not a reason. Like, there should be, oh, you could abort under reasonable. There is no wording of reasonable circumstances. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, you can abort at any time, anywhere, and for any circumstance, right?
Yes.
Yet here, for some reason, when it's like such a fundamental right to defend yourself, it's not there. It doesn't. It just, everything's reasonable circumstance. All up to judge to interpretate.
Wow.
Interpretate.
People mess that one up a lot. Yeah, that's interesting.
So
I have a question.
It's interesting.
I know people think this. People consider, like, I think that's one of the reasons that people get abortions, that women get abortions, is because they think that a child will intrude on their lives. So it's like, I keep forgetting that word. It's like, it starts with a P and it's before something happens. I can't remember the word. Like preemptive, pre-something. I don't know.
It's too fancy. Just explain it.
I keep forgetting. But it's like before something happens. Preventative. There we go. It's like a preventative measure.
Oh, so the
you
baby
are defending yourself before you, like, from the baby intruding on your life.
We're going there.
Yes.
Although, yeah, okay, I see your point. So
So it could be
essentially,
argued that abortion is self-defense.
yeah, they. Oh, what else we got?
But then, but then you don't really have the right to self-defense, which is exactly what we're talking about here. And
Yes.
that would stand true from our perspective because abortion is not right,
Yeah.
according to us.
We're doing some crazy, like, mental gymnastics.
Are you a pro at that too?
I guess so.
Awesome.
Because
Okay.
I definitely see the connection.
Yeah, you see
It's
where
a
I'm
form
getting
of
that
self-defense because it's like I don't have the economic status for that, or
Yes.
it's going to ruin my life,
Yeah.
right? So I'm going to abort the baby. So you're essentially defending yourself from a certain
Even
circumstance.
with the idea that like a pregnancy could be life-threatening.
Oh, yes, that's another one. It's like, oh, it could be
Wow.
life-threatening, so we're going to abort the baby. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's going to be no trial, no
No.
nothing.
There isn't.
Even if you abort the
Wow.
baby the day of. Or
That's
the day
just
of the due
horrible.
date.
Wow.
So that's an interesting point.
Yes, we make these leaps and bounds for that so-called right, but not for the right to self-defense. Wow. I didn't really see that coming up today. There we go. Yeah, we don't plan everything that we talk about on our podcasts. Anyways, let's move on to part 2 of section 34, the defense or use of force. And this I kind of just summarized because it's really long. And it's basically just a list. The court will take into account various things to determine if the act was reasonable in the circumstances. And some of the things that they take into account are the nature of the force or threat, the extent to which force was imminent, and whether there were other means available to respond to the potential use of force. So that's where we mentioned earlier, like running away, retreating, calling the police. Used or threatened, if one of the parties involved used or threatened to use a weapon, the size, age, gender, and physical capabilities of the people involved, the relationship history of the people involved, and the nature and proportionality of the person's response to the use of force or threat, and the response to lawful threat or force. Now, that's an interesting addition, actually, that was changed from the old law, is that now you don't have to be defending yourself specifically from something that is unlawful. You can defend yourself
For some
within, the limitations of how you can defend yourself, and that it has to be reasonable against something that is technically lawful.
Yeah.
Which kind of just goes to show that not everything that is lawful is right. You can misuse the law, is my point.
This is like 10 a.m. in the morning. We're doing some really great mental thinking here. Yeah, another point I want to mention about the law here, because this, like, when Canadian American military was in Afghanistan, in Iraq, they were fighting, and there's a lot of civilians present during the fights.
Yep.
And essentially what happens is they literally have to report every single incident, every single confirmed kill that happens. They have to make a report about the killing and make sure that it was legal. Mm-hmm. So you don't have the right to fire at somebody who's dangerous and armed until he's pointing his weapon at you. Also, you don't have the right to respond to you have the right to respond to contact. So somebody fired at you first, but essentially when you're going in, unless it's a special mission and they have special clarification and special permission to engage as an ambush, but usually like regular infantry forces that would be there, they would be penalized and court-martialed if you are the first one shooting. Because there were so many civilians involved, right? Civilians would just pick up guns, little kids would pick up guns and start shooting. And essentially you cannot shoot unless the barrel is pointing at you. And that just goes to show, because a lot of, like, you speak to any veteran, he thinks that's completely crazy because you're at war, like these things happen, and your primary priority should be to defend yourself and your team. Yet the primary priority is put on making sure that it's legal. And so you essentially don't have the right to kill somebody in combat unless they are attacking you first. Which is a pretty crazy idea,
Wait
but
a
it kind of...
second. Does that apply to both sides?
No, of course not. You think that Iraqis have those laws?
Well, that's exactly my
Or
point. I'm like,
terrorists have
how
those
would war
laws?
happen if you had to wait to be attacked? If everyone had to wait to be attacked first? I think that's brilliant. We would just eradicate war.
Because nobody would attack first. I guess
Exactly.
legally you wouldn't be allowed to.
Exactly.
But it's like, no, that's not how war really works. Like the war in like Russia, Ukraine, it's like there's no such thing. But when you have the peacekeeping missions, right, quote unquote, when the Americans come in and the NATO forces come in, they have to abide by their Geneva Convention and all of their laws. And one of them being that you would just be responding to contact. And a lot of forces are, like a lot of troops and men out there are always talk about these situations and how dangerous it is to have that type of law. And how a lot of their friends and a lot of their teammates got killed because of that. They're like, oh my God, I don't want to break the law. I don't want to be court-martialed. My career is going to be ruined. Boom, they get killed.
Career, life.
Yes.
And you're stuck.
Well,
in that.
they're trained as professionals, and typically they're very good at doing that over time. But still, those incidents happen, and these deaths are preventable. Because are you going to be defending yourself and your team, or are you going to make sure that everything goes by the rules when rules are completely thrown out by the other side?
Yeah.
So that's...
Sometimes it's better to act first and ask forgiveness later. That applies in a lot of situations. But another thing I wanted to bring up with that is you can't, like, if this is a peacekeeping team, you can't do your job if you aren't protecting yourself. Like, I think this is a very different example, but, for example, you get on a plane and you hear the whatever safety announcements and stuff, right? And if the plane is like losing the oxygen masks drop from the ceiling, you put it on you first before you help the person next to you, because otherwise you're useless.
Yep.
So you have to defend yourself. Yep. So it's ridiculous that we don't actually have the right specifically.
Yeah. There's so many cases in our lives, like the one with the plane you mentioned, where it applies. It's like, take care of you first, put your seatbelt on first and strap, whatever help. It's like everything is all about you first, safety first. But for some reason, when it comes down to things like war rules, I guess you would call them, or self-defense, it's kind of thrown out the window. And those are those are very dangerous situations compared to some other ones that are just civil. And and I don't know, maybe there is a reason for that. Maybe the military does have a reason for using it, and there's actually something that they do it for. I never heard it being, like, by the veterans, I've never heard it being praised, that like, oh, it's a good thing that we do this the proper way type of thing. They are always complaining about it because they know that some of their men got killed because of it.
Yeah.
And so this is a similar situation to, like, just circling back to our whole video, is like, you're in a life-threatening situation and you should not be thinking about like legalities of things. You defend yourself.
Yeah. Exactly. And if you had the right, it's not something that you would have to think about.
Bingo.
Yes. All right. We already talked about our lovely charter of rights and freedoms that are not really exactly rights or freedoms. And now we have the Bill of Rights, which says that it is hereby recognized and declared that in Canada there have existed and shall continue to exist without discrimination by reasons of race, national origin, color, religion, or sex the following human rights and fundamental freedoms, namely, I'm going to skip to B, the right of the individual to equality before the law and the protection of the law.
So how does this apply and tie to our situation here?
Well, this more I wanted to bring up because of a Government of Canada website that I looked at, and we can put that up on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. But the quote is that you should have the right to do, that you have the right to due legal process under Canadian law, which means that the government must respect all your rights under the law. That's from a Canadian government website. But that doesn't actually work then in practice, because in the context of this whole self-defense thing that we're talking about, if you can be charged for defending yourself, then it's not a right, because this website is defining this as your rights have to be respected under the law. And if you had the right, then it would have to be respected. But because there is always that subjectivity, I think I have a quote about that too. Now there is like a test for reasonableness when you go to court for a self-defense case. And it's a combination of the subjective and the objective. So I think in the older laws, it used to just be subjective. So it was just totally based on what the person in the situation believed at the time. So now it is that, what they believed at the time, and compared to what would be a reasonable response from someone in that situation decided by the jury. So it's like we take into account your subjective opinion of or like your belief of what happened in the situation, but it has to be backed up objectively.
Right. And in a lot of cases, how do you do that? Like, practically, how does this work?
How does that work?
I understand
you experience something. I don't know. To pick an example, something happens.
Yeah.
Someone comes, breaks into your house, and you think that they are armed and going to kill you. Okay? And then I'm the jury, and I go, okay, someone broke into my house. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is not that they're armed and going to kill me. So I'm not going to react that way. Well, if that's what this whole jury decides, then you're more likely to be charged. Because our objective reasoning of what we would do in that situation, which is a bit subjective because they're the ones deciding on what they think they would have done in that situation.
Well, jury is pretty subjective.
Exactly.
They're
but they
supposed to
use
be
that as an
objective,
argument to be objective. So it's like your subjectivity based on their subjectivity to a hypothetical situation for them, which actually happened to you. It's just, that's a very confusing.
Here we go
again. A lot
again.
of words. Yes.
But with the Bill of Rights, and it says you have the right to protection of the law, but it's like, if the law is so loosely phrased,
so
vague with all this gray area, then that's irrelevant. You might as well not write it in there.
How is the law going to protect you?
Yeah. It's
it
like,
can't. There's no guarantee that it will.
No shit, you have protection under the law, but your law sucks.
Yes.
So it's irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. It doesn't even have to be stated in there.
Sadly.
Because you don't have the right. So who cares if you're protecting it if it's going to be up to interpretation anyways?
Exactly. It's all up for interpretation.
Okay, well, to tie things in, I figured this would be a perfect...
I had one more point that I want to make, because a lot of people in the comments talked about you have to use equal force, or you have to use proportional force, or you have to use minimum force, or no more force than necessary. That was in the old law. No more force than necessary. Okay. That wording was in there.
Well, that's where they get it from.
If that's what you're thinking, you're basing your argument on what the law used to be. And it's been updated, and I just read you the updated law, and there is no mention, and there's a couple other sections in it that I'm not going to get into because whatever, it's just details that are not really relevant to what we're arguing. And it's just reasons why this stuff doesn't actually apply in half the situations. And also, for those of you who cited Section 35, it's basically applied the same way that Section 34 would be, so we're also not getting into that. But my point is, you're relying on the old law, and we are talking about the updated law, which uses the word reasonably a lot, and there's a lot of subjectivity, objectivity. It's just incredibly vague. is the point.
Yeah,
But
but
it is
either
not part of the law that you can only use equal force
yes,
or lesser
that's
force.
something
It's
old.
reasonable.
That's the old definition. Regardless, they changed the wording. It's still it's still being used the same way.
Yeah, like I'm not saying this law is the updated law is better. It might be in some ways, maybe like a tiny bit better,
I guess because
but
you
it's
cannot measure,
still
equal force, or whatever,
exactly.
right?
But the point is, it's still not a right based on the old law or the new one.
I'm just going back to this paralegal
Mm-hmm.
that messaged us because, like, I would assume paralegal knows a little bit more than just the average citizen, although he did have
I'd
the same
hope
argument
so.
that everybody else. Where this person stated there are restrictions, as in you can't use excessive force, of course. That's just like going back to that
It's
old
kind of common
definition.
sense, though, too. I don't know. It
It
depends on the
depends.
situation. See, a lot of this is subjective, regardless.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like in America, in a lot of the states, you are you're allowed to
They have the
defend yourself.
they have the castle law
They have the
too.
castle law, or castle, what is it, castle
Whatever it's called.
doctrine,
Yeah, I think
something
that's
like
right.
that. And that just gives the ability for people to do that in their home, but it's like their property, it's their home. So I could stand by that. That makes sense to me. And of course, like excessive force, like I was talking about with kids fighting in high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you already got the kid down. Okay, he's basically not defending himself anymore. Let him go,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, if you continue doing that and you just kill the kid, that's bad,
Mm-hmm.
and you should be charged in that circumstance. But like in your home, that has to be completely like
Yeah.
has to be very black and white. In your
Mm-hmm.
home, you have the right.
Yes, and I was reading an article. I think it was on CBC, maybe, old article from like 10 years ago. But it was someone talking about why people like us are wrong about our perspective in this situation.
Oh, there was that.
Yes, yes, it was a little bit interesting, but it was mostly just super vague, like the law. So I would say the writer or whoever it was, some lawyer was talking about it, and I'd say, yeah, okay. So what? Your whole point is there's a lot of gray areas. Yes, that kind of makes it not a right. That's our whole argument here.
Yeah.
Is there's so many gray areas that how do you even how does anything get done? I don't know. There's just so much gray. But his argument was that in Canada, you have and again, this is very interesting wording, but it's like you have the most rights to self defense within your own home.
In Canada,
Yes,
that was the argument.
that was, yeah.
The most rights. What does that even mean?
Like compared to if you're out in public, like you can basically, he was saying, I forget the lawyer's name, but he was saying that if someone comes into your home to attack you, you are able to defend yourself more, essentially, compared to if you're out in public
Oh,
and someone goes to attack like the person that you're with, which you are allowed to defend someone else. I would really hope so. But it's like that is even more of a gray area because you're not in your own home and it's not you that you're defending, it's someone else. So then it's just like a whole bunch of other, it's a
yeah,
whole other can of worms. It's like really we have to have a different self-defense law for
yeah.
like every possible situation. That's ridiculous. Then you don't have the right to self-defense if everything is dependent on what the situation was. And the
Yeah.
situation, sure, should be taken into account, but that's not a right then.
And I could see a lot of scenarios happening, like just from just thinking about it, with that in public, like somebody's getting beat up in public, or somebody's like
You're just
about to
gonna
get
leave
stabbed
them?
or whatever, right? And there's like a lot of people around, and you get this
Yeah.
bystander effect.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it's called, where all these people have so much power to like just tackle the guy down and like stop the fight, but they're not gonna do it because either one, they're cowards, most likely they're cowards, and two, some of them might be scared of the law. They're like, oh, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
I might hurt him and then I'm gonna go to jail too,
Yeah.
right? But like,
So you're just gonna
like,
leave someone helpless there?
yeah, Call the police.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they tell you in school. That's what they tell you with first responder, first aid courses. I took a bunch of those. Like, I had to do that for my certification and stuff as a coach. And they always tell you, like, yeah, you should just be calling the police and tell them exactly what's happening. And
Like, whatever happened to personal responsibility, just being,
just being
a
good,
good
person.
person.
Yeah. It's just being a good person.
Stand up for those around you. Don't let these wrong things keep
like,
happening.
put yourself in that situation and you're completely helpless and defenseless, and you
wouldn't
just
you
got
want someone to
tackled
stand
by
up for
like
you?
giant 250-pound man. What are you gonna do, right? Like, if you're a lot smaller, it's very hard to fight back. Most likely you don't know how to defend yourself, you don't know how to wrestle, you don't know how to do all of those things, and you're just being beat up, and they're taking your money or whatever, they're robbing you. And you would want people to come in and help you. It's like, dude, like, there's so many people, come help me. Right? But you're like, just put yourself in those situations, I think, is the best way to look at it and to decide really, like, what's the best thing to do. Put yourself in that situation and see what you would want people to do for you.
Yes. Oh, actually, I just remembered, I do have a story about this. So when I was in grade 10, there was a stabbing at my high school. Have I told you about this?
No.
Okay. So anyways, this girl, I don't know, she had some mental problems. She shouldn't have been at the school because she was expelled from a few schools for doing things and injuring people. So why they transferred her to my school, I don't know. But anyways, so this happened one day. Our school had 2 campuses, so I was in the one that she was not attacking people in. And one of the phys ed teachers, like, tackled her, held her down because she's, like, running around the school with knives trying to stab people, and was almost let into the library, which, like, it was like we went into lockdown,
right,
to protect people, right? But they almost let her in the library because I guess she was bleeding or something, and so they thought that she was a victim, not the attacker.
Right.
And anyways, so this gym teacher, like, tackled her. He, under logical circumstances would be seen as a hero for that, but he was charged with assault. I do believe that he got off without actually, being charged,
right,
or anything. But it's like, how do you...
He tackled her, then hurt her, probably took the knife away.
Yeah.
Controlled her.
Yeah.
He probably knew some form of jiu-jitsu, wrestling,
Probably.
something.
Yeah. So, like, no, this is the guy in the right,
Yeah,
protecting all the other students and staff.
yet he
at the
has
school.
to pay legal fees.
Yes.
He has to go through all this trouble, go to court, and deal with the stress of potentially going to jail for
Yeah.
being a good person.
Yes, because he was charged with sexual assault.
Sexual assault?
What? Because she was a girl.
What? Who cares? She had a knife.
I know, but I know this. But her parents charged him with
Oh
sexual
my
assault for
God.
tackling her because she was a girl.
That's completely bizarre.
But that's how twisted
Yep.
people think.
So you don't have the right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good story.
Yes, I guess so. I mean,
Were you there to see the whole thing?
no, I was in the other building.
Okay. You
Yeah.
just heard about it after.
I mean, the whole school is like they locked down both campuses.
Right.
Yeah.
You didn't see the girl, you didn't see the tackling.
No. I know who she was. She was, yeah, you could tell there was something off. Yeah. You can tell these things with people sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah,
You could tell that they're going through stuff.
definitely. So,
Good.
yeah. I just remember a guy running into the music room and being like, there's a girl running around the school with knives, and everyone is like in complete disbelief. But it was true.
Yeah.
So we were locked down for a couple hours. That was before school even started that day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Good man. It's a damn good gym teacher
Yes.
right there.
Yes, he is. Yes, we admire him.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're good to move on to the next. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. And this very well ties into what we're talking about today, which is self-defense. but we're going to talk about self-defense with guns. And because in Canada we've been going through lots of introduced and new legislation in restricting and banning certain guns. Most recently, they're looking to ban handguns completely. There was a freeze on handguns, so no selling of handguns, and they're also starting a buyback program to buy back assault rifles and things like that. And it's just getting increasingly more restrictive. And the premise behind it is safety. So we're going to take a look at some of the research I've done because I was always curious about this. I always believed as a kid, because this is what I was always told, that in the States, the reason there's just so much crime, and the reason there's so much crime is because they have guns. Just, you can go to Walmart and get a gun. And therefore, you have so many shootings, you have so many mass shootings, and they must be the country that has the most shootings in the world. And so guns are bad because of all these things happening. And I was always curious about that because there's always the other side of the argument. People looked into those things and they say, hey, we got to use guns for self-defense. So I was skeptical and I wanted to find out things, and this is what I found. So we're going to go through some research. These things are not pertaining to Canada because we have such a small kind of data pool in terms of mass shootings, guns and use of guns, et cetera, et cetera. But just going to start this off with the fact that I have done, I am certified in, actually I'm not certified yet, I'm still waiting for my license, but I have gone through the Canadian a gun safety course. And so there they teach you about gun safety, how to handle a gun, what are the legal rights, and et cetera, et cetera. The first thing that came up was, the first question that we got from the instructor was, what's the reason that you are looking to get a license?
And there's something you can't say.
Yes. And essentially, most people kind of said, I just want to go hunting. I want to go to the range and practice as a skill.
Which is fun.
Which is fun. You've
I
done
did
that.
that one time, yeah.
You've done that, and yeah. And one guy said self-defense. And immediately the instructor said, I was waiting for an answer like that because this is something I have to tell you, and this is the first thing I tell you right off the bat, is if you put down on your application that you're getting a weapon for self-defense, you're not going to get your license.
Nope.
Because you're not allowed to use weapons, guns specifically, for self-defense.
In Canada.
And regardless of the situation, if you use it, you will be charged with murder or whatever the situation is, assault, murder.
So again, do you really have the right to self-defense?
Yeah. So, however, in many states in the U.S., you do have the right. Well, in U.S. you have the right to self-defense, but in many states you also have the right to even open carry, like in Texas. You have the right to defend yourself with a weapon in most cases. So we're going to take a look at some of the data presented in the States, how many people use it for protection against crime, how many of those cases occur, and what are the real statistics here, not the ones that you hear on television. Because one thing that you should learn from the podcast and listening to us here is that not everything you see on television is true. And I would argue for the most part it isn't true at all.
The what our paralegal told us, that journalists have an obligation to tell the truth. Sadly.
Yeah, and in many cases they might, but it's twisted to prove their point or to show their point. So essentially, we're going to go through what statistics the media uses, because they use one same study that has been debunked to be completely false, and we're going to take a look at that.
That's great.
But first of all, we're going to start off with a 2019 poll. It's called a Gallup poll that states the gun owners own firearms for the following reasons. 63% of gun owners own firearms for protection against crime. 40% own guns for hunting, and 15% own guns for recreation target shooting.
That adds up to more than 100%.
Yes, it does, because with this poll, you were allowed to pick multiple answers. So you could have picked all three if you wanted to.
I see.
Because like some people get it for hunting and self-defense. So most people checked off the box of self-defense and something else, which is essentially what happened here. But the highest, by far, 63%, get it for the protection against crime.
Yes.
So clearly it's important for the individual to have the right to do that. In Canada, those 63% of people would not have the right to do that. And so you wouldn't be able to own a gun if you were actually truthful about why you're having a gun.
Oh no,
And
you mean
so-
people lie about that?
The study here that it looks into all these statistics, it also talks about the fact that the value of firearms in the hands of law-abiding citizens should be measured in terms of lives saved or crimes prevented and not criminals killed. And essentially, we're always looking at the other side of the equation, where the media always portrays it, oh, look, this person got killed by a gun, ban gun, therefore you will not kill person. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be the it's not necessarily going to be the gun that does the killing, obviously. It's going to be the person that does the killing. So let's take a look at some of the other things here. In 2013, and this is same study that kind of compiles all these evidence. In 2013, President Obama ordered the Department of Health and Human Services and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, to conduct or sponsor research into the causes of gun violence and the ways to prevent it. Essentially, what they have found was that almost all national survey estimates indicate that defensive gun uses by victims are at least as common as offensive uses by criminals, with estimates of annual uses ranging from 500,000 to more than 3 million. Next, studies that directly assess the effect of actual defensive uses of guns have found consistently lower injury rates among gun-using crime victims compared with victims who used other self-protective strategies. And
Like running away. Or
like running
calling the
away,
police.
calling police, hiding. It results in lower injury rates if you are not worried about the law, if you have the right to self-defense in your own home with a weapon.
Because the other thing is too, you don't even necessarily have to actually use the weapon, but it's like the threat of it. And then, you know, rather than you being like, do I make a decision between protecting myself and, you know, potentially risking jail time or whatever, or potentially losing my life, it's now that decision is turned on the criminal because they see that you are capable of protecting yourself, defending yourself, and whether or not you shoot, there's now a higher chance that they'll retreat just because
Yes.
you have the weapon.
So we're going to get to the statistics of that as well. In a 1982 survey, this is going back pretty far, right? We're talking 40 years here. However, I would argue that this still stands because the human mentality has not really changed to that big degree. So 1982 survey of male felons in 11 state prisons across the US has found that 34% have been scared off, shot at, wounded, or captured by an armed victim. 40% had decided not to commit a crime because they knew or believed that the victim was carrying a gun, which is like, it's crazy because 40% of crime was prevented simply because you were open carrying.
Yeah.
Or you you kind of...
Are you saying that guns actually make us safer?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I love
You
it.
got it. And finally, 69% personally knew other criminals who had been scared off, shot at, wounded, or captured by an armed victim. So there's literally fear among
Criminals.
felons and criminals going around in the States
Yes.
because they know like freaking half the population has guns
Yes.
or more. And some of them will open carry or concealed carry. So it's kind of scary as a criminal going in to a school or a mall trying to shoot, because like there's a good chance that somebody's is concealed carrying or open carrying, and they're just gonna pull out a gun and put you down.
Yeah.
Like, but you have no fear of that here in Canada.
No.
Nobody has a gun
Nobody
here.
here is armed.
Nobody here is armed outside their home or a range. So like a criminal's not gonna go to a range and like start shooting because he's gonna
not.
right. But they're gonna go to a mall and they're gonna go just downtown. You can go anywhere.
Yeah.
You as holding a weapon, you have so much power because the only people that can stop you are the police, which are actually very good, very bad at doing that because they get trained once a year,
Oh, wow.
or maybe even less depending on which department we're looking at. But it's a huge problem because a lot of times like the policemen end up hurting other people rather than the criminal, because they just don't know how to shoot, they don't know how to respond. How many cases do we have where they just do really stupid shit? So
Yeah.
our police force is not trained. It's hard to just give your rights to self-defense, and well, not even your rights to self-defense, but it's hard to give your life and your safety and protection to somebody who's barely trained. And also you never know when they're going to show up or if they're going to be there at all. So it's a little bit of a defenseless position you're in, that the government puts you in because of the restrictions that they're making. And another argument that everybody always has, and it has to be stated, is that when you're making laws and you're making restrictions, you're not actually restricting the criminals from obtaining guns.
Yeah, because they're not going to follow the laws anyways.
Yeah, and that's
They
the
don't
big
care.
and that's the big fallacy that people have. They think, oh, you're going to restrict guns, therefore criminals won't have guns. And
You're
it's
wrong.
like, by definition, a criminal is going to
Someone
break
who's
the law.
going to break the law.
So the law is irrelevant at that point. So yeah, just think about it. Just think about it. Now, we're going to talk about mass shootings now. Mass shootings in the US between 1982 and 2020 by state. So we're looking at state statistics. And the highest number of mass shootings in that 40-year period was a 40-year? Yeah, that's 40-year period was in California by far. California had 23 mass shootings. Florida had 12, Texas had 12, Washington 7, Colorado 7, and the rest go 5 and below. So, and California is one of the states that has the strictest gun restrictions in the whole
Wow.
country. It's kind of like, it's similar to what we have in Canada. Very, very strict. You cannot conceal carry, you cannot open carry. And there's just very, like, there's a lot of restrictions. And so
And yet
obviously,
it has almost
looking at our
double.
previous statistics, the criminals feel pretty safe and comfortable doing mass shootings in that state because
Yeah.
they know that they have the power in that particular situation.
absolutely. I mean, look at that. It's double
It's
almost of the
Yeah.
next highest amount of shootings
Yeah.
in the 40 years.
Um,
And people want tighter gun restrictions.
yeah.
But there you have, like, this is just proof that they don't work.
It's proof that they don't work, yeah, because we have something similar as what's going on in California. Like, we have a much smaller population, much less dense. And of course, our statistics are not going to be as crazy as this, not as disproportionate. But if you're looking at kind of like a supersized, hyper situation where you apply these laws and rules and you just kind of inflate it to see what is going to happen in the extreme cases, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Right? This is an experiment that you could see that that's what's happening. And yet they're trying to restrict things more in states like New York and California and Washington. Think about it. Moving on next to mass shootings in the United States between 1982 and 2022 by presence of prior signs of shooters' mental health issues. So we're looking at the reason the shooter was committing a mass shooting. And it doesn't state any other reason. It's just specifically looking at mental health, whether mental health problems were a sign or the reason that the shooting happened. And so in 132 reported mass shootings in the United States in that 40-year period, 64 of them had prior signs of mental health problems. 64, and that's majority compared to the other reasons.
Yeah.
27 were unknown or to be determined. 17 were no signs of mental health. Only 17 out of 132 did not have mental health issues. So clearly, like, maybe we should be looking at this and saying, hey, this person had a mental health issue. This is why it happened. Not because of the gun.
Yes.
They were probably going to do it regardless.
Yeah. You can use it, just about anything as a weapon.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a gun. So if someone's going to attack, they're going to attack.
And yeah, and there, I don't have the article here with me, but there are 2 cases of shootings in BC several weeks ago, one in Langley, one in Whistler, and both shootings happened. People were killed. Yet we have all these restrictions. Where are they getting the guns from? I wonder, huh?
Oh no. Guess our laws aren't working.
I guess we need more restrictions now. But that's the justification that is being used all the time, is that, oh, look, mass shooting happened, we need more restrictions. Oh, mass shooting happened, we need more restrictions. Looking at something that happened in Indiana, that same week, or maybe the week after the shootings in BC, it was a Good Samaritan that prevented a mass shooting. So somebody was walking around pointing a gun, literally started shooting at people, and they shot him down. As somebody who was just in the mall or out in public.
In
and nobody
Canada?
got hurt.
No, where did you say?
No, this is Indiana.
Okay, in the States.
In the States.
'Cause I was like,
So-
how did he get a gun?
Yeah. No, so
In the
this is in the States, right? So nobody got hurt except for the attacker.
Yes.
Good.
Which is reasonable.
It's good.
Yes.
Yet in Canada,
How
that person
many
would be
lives
charged
did
with
he
murder.
save? I mean, I guess you can't actually know that, but
Yeah. So going back to the whole question, right? So the original question was, does the States have the most mass shootings? Does the States have the most shootings, period,
they sure
in the
make
world?
it sound like they do.
It for sure, because anything that happens, it's always
Yeah.
inflated in the media, and
They're always talking about it.
talking about this stuff. So
It was like back in June, there were like 3 shootings in a week or something, or in the span of
yeah,
not a lot of time.
yeah, it was in 1 week. It was
Yeah.
crazy. It was the Uvalde
Uh-huh.
school shooting. There was one in Buffalo, and there's another one in New York, I think. Yeah, and they just kind of used the, oh my god, we need to ban guns, and they actually started pushing legislation as soon as that happened.
Yes. Interesting timing.
Interesting time, but they're never going to talk about this Indiana case. They're going to write a little
No.
quiet article, kind
Yeah.
of state it here. No big deal, no biggie, right? But they're going to blow it all up when something big happens with a mass shooting, not look at the actual causes of it and simply say guns are at fault.
Yep.
Next, how the United States compares to the rest of the world. The list of all, so this is another study that has been conducted, and this has been used in the website that I have found that kind of puts all the sources together. So here in this study, the list of all of our 1,491 cases from 1998 to 2012 is provided, and of those, 43 occurred in the United States. So we talked 130 something cases happened in the 40-year period, but since 1988 to 2012, 43 mass shootings occurred in the United States. And the other 1,448 happened in the rest of the world. While the US had about 4.6% of the world's population, during this period, it had just 2.88% of mass public shootings. The United States was host to a still smaller share of people killed in these attacks. Worldwide, mass public shooting murders total to 15,420 people, so that's how many people were killed in the world due to mass shootings. And the US counted for 325 of these, so 2.1%. So 2.88% and 2.1%, they account for the mass shootings. consider their population, right? So how does US compare to the other countries? Are they actually the most? That's the big question. And here's the answer. In the 89 countries where we identified mass public shootings, the US ranks 58th in attack rate and 62nd in murder rate. Norway, Finland, Switzerland, and Russia are major European countries with at least 45% higher rates of murder from mass public shootings than the United States. The rates in Pakistan and India are respectively 555% and 76% higher than the US rate.
What? And we make such a big deal about the States.
Yeah.
What's all the drama about?
The drama is about taking the guns away.
Yes, of course. Do you think they're talking about that in
just getting heated
anywhere
now.
else?
I know you're being sarcastic, but I'm just getting heated now. But that's what it is. So, like, for those of you who are, maybe new to the information and you had kind of the same thinking as I did, because I was like, yeah, guns are great, but still, I think the most shootings happen in the United States and all of this. It's not true.
No, it's not. This stuff is surprising to me to find this all out.
Yeah.
It's always very interesting to learn that things are not what they seem.
Yeah, so that's what we've got. Now, finally, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about guns, and I'm done. So, then where does the mainstream media find backup for what they claim? Because they always claim that the most mass shootings happen in the United States. Well, this is all done by one study, and I'm just going to read through how this study should not be used, and it should just be thrown out as junk science. A paper on mass shootings by Adam Lankford in 2016 has received massive national and international media attention, getting coverage in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, plus hundreds of other news outlets spanning at least 35 different countries. Lankford's claim was that over the 47 years from 1966 to 2012, an enormous amount of world mass public shooters, 31%, occurred in the United States. Lankford attributed this to America's gun ownership, of course. Lankford claims to have complete data on such shooters in 171 countries. However, because he has neither identified the cases nor their location, nor even a complete description on how he put the cases together, it is impossible to replicate his findings.
Wow.
Well, the scientific method states that your findings should be replicated multiple times before it is published and used.
Yes.
Moving on. It is particularly important that Lankford share his data because of the extreme difficulty in finding mass shooting cases in remote parts of the world going back to 1966. Lack of media coverage could easily lead to undercounting of foreign mass shootings, which would falsely lead to the conclusion that U.S. has such a large share. Lankford's study reported that from 1966 to 2012, there were 90 public mass shooters in the United States and 202 in the rest of the world. We find that Lankford's data represent a gross undercount of foreign attacks. Our list contains 1,448 attacks, that's the one I was talking about, and at least 3,081 shooters outside the United States over just the last 15 years of the period that Lankford examined. So he examined a very, like 60 years, almost 60 years. But they're talking about in the last 15 years, they've had 1,448 attacks in the world, where he only counted 202.
Wow.
We find at least 15 times more mass public shooters than Lankford in less than a third the number of years. Even when we use coding choices that are most charitable to Lankford, his 31% estimate of the U.S. share of world mass public shooters is cut by over 95%. By our count, the U.S. makes up less than 1.43% of mass public shooters, 2.11% of their murders, and 2.88% of their attacks. All these are much less than the U.S. 4.6% share of the world's population. Attacks in the U.S. are not only less frequent than in other countries, they're also much less deadly on average.
Wow.
And my guess would be attributed to the fact that so many people own guns and they're good Samaritans and they're not worried about the law. They're just going to put the guy down.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Given the massive US and international media attention Langford's work has received, and given the considerable impact his research has had on the debate, it is critical that this issue be resolved. His unwillingness to provide even the most basic information to other researchers raises real concerns about Langford's motives.
No kidding, it does.
Yeah. And just to clarify how the reason why later on they did get some data from him, and the reason why he only got 90 public mass shootings in the States but only 202 in the rest of the world was because terrorist attacks where there are multiple shooters,
Oh, yes.
so is not defined as a mass shooting.
Right.
So like things that happen, just the terrorist attacks or where there's like a mass shooting, typically it's done with a group of people. In other parts of the world, the gangs, right?
Yeah.
Gangs. And they're not counted. And so the US, and this is a true statistic, in the US, usually a mass shooter is one person. And typically shootings happen with one person doing the shooting. So he used that in order to skew his data to say, oh, look, it's more deadly here in the States.
Man, what a difference a definition makes.
Yeah. So, there you have it.
Wow, we covered a lot today. I hope everybody learned something.
That's the goal of this podcast. So,
Yes, it is.
well, thank you for joining us. We'll be in touch with you soon. And have a good one.
Yes. Thanks for listening.